Once, Monarch Airlines was the pride of British skies. For half a century, it carried millions of families from gray, rainy England to the golden beaches of Spain, Greece, and beyond. But behind the cheerful yellow and purple logo and smiling flight attendants, a silent storm was building, one that would eventually bring the airline crashing down. This is the story of how Monarch Airlines went from flying high to disappearing completely, and what every business can learn from its fall. If you love stories about legendary airlines that rose and then fell from grace, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot more coming your way. It all began in 1967 when aviation veterans Bill Hodgson and Don Peacock founded Monarch Airlines at Luton Airport. Back then, flying was still a luxury, something only the wealthy could afford. Monarch's mission was simple but revolutionary: make air travel affordable for ordinary families dreaming of Mediterranean sunshine. With just 2 Bristol Britannia turboprop aircraft, they tapped into the post-war travel boom and the rise of package holidays. Tour operators needed reliable partners, and Monarch delivered. Dependable, punctual, and customer-friendly. By the early 1970s, Monarch had found its rhythm. The airline introduced its first jet, the Boeing 720B, and suddenly British tourists could reach sunny destinations faster and cheaper than ever before. Monarch wasn't just selling flights, it was selling the dream of freedom. Through the 1970s and 1980s, Monarch expanded steadily. Families recognized the name, travel agents trusted it, and by the late 80s, Monarch was no longer just a charter airline. It had become a symbol of British leisure travel. But as Monarch soared, the world beneath it began to change. And those changes would soon test the airline's wings like never before. It looked unstoppable. But the higher you fly, the harder you fall. By the early 1990s, Monarch wanted more. The airline expanded into long-haul travel, adding wide-body Airbus A300s and A330 to reach faraway destinations, from the Caribbean to North America. It was an ambitious leap, but also a risky one. At the same time, the travel industry itself was transforming. Package holidays, once Monarch's bread and butter, were fading. Independent travelers began booking flights and hotels on their own, and a new breed of competitors was rising fast: Ryanair and EasyJet, airlines that stripped away every non-essential feature to offer rock-bottom fares. Monarch's leadership faced a dilemma. Should they join the low-cost revolution, or stay true to their more traditional model of service and comfort? They tried to do both. In the early 2000s, Monarch rebranded itself as a hybrid. Low fares with a touch of service. It was bold but confusing. Passengers didn't quite know what Monarch stood for anymore. Was it a budget airline or a premium one? Still, the mid-2000s were good years. Monarch carried over 6 million passengers annually, operating from Luton, Gatwick, Manchester, and Birmingham. Its slogan captured its spirit: the low-fare airline that cares. It was profitable, respected, and, at least on the surface, thriving. But beneath that polished image, cracks were forming. As the 2010s began, the skies grew darker. Ryanair and EasyJet dominated short-haul travel with enormous fleets and ruthless efficiency. They could afford to charge less and still make money. Monarch couldn't. In 2011, Monarch reported losses of over £30 million. The management tried to pivot, dropping long-haul routes and focusing on short and medium-haul leisure flights. It was a survival move, not a growth plan. Then came a wave of external shocks. Fuel prices soared. Political unrest in key destinations like Egypt and Tunisia disrupted routes, and the British pound weakened, squeezing already thin margins. Monarch was flying millions of people, but losing altitude fast. By 2014, things reached a breaking point. Private equity firm Greybull Capital stepped in with a rescue package, promising a leaner, more focused Monarch. The deal came with painful cuts. Routes canceled, staff reduced, and the long-haul dream abandoned once and for all. At first, it seemed to work. The airline modernized its fleet and operated more efficiently, but the fundamental problem remained. Monarch was stuck between two worlds, too small to compete on price, too plain to compete on service. Then came the final blow: Brexit, currency fluctuations, rising costs, and plummeting consumer confidence hit the airline hard. Holidays abroad suddenly became more expensive for British travelers, and demand dropped sharply. By the summer of 2017, Monarch was fighting for survival. Executives scrambled to find new investors. Negotiations dragged on, but by October, time had run out. October 2nd, 2017. Overnight, Monarch ceased operations and all flights were canceled. Over 110,000 passengers stranded abroad. It became the largest peacetime repatriation effort in UK history. For many, the news came like a thunderclap. An airline that had carried generations of families, gone in a single night. Monarch didn't crash. It simply ran out of sky. Monarch's downfall wasn't caused by one bad decision. It was the result of 1,000 small ones. Internally, it struggled with identity. It wasn't truly low cost, but it wasn't full service either. That in-between position confused customers and weakened its competitiveness. Operationally, its costs were too high. Leasing aircraft, maintaining older planes, and paying staff under legacy contracts made it impossible to match the efficiency of its rivals. Strategically, Monarch failed to anticipate just how dominant the low-cost model would become. While Ryanair and EasyJet were reinventing European travel, Monarch clung to a fading middle ground. And externally, the world turned against it. Rising fuel prices, geopolitical instability, Brexit uncertainty, all the turbulence at once. When the engines finally stopped, the damage was immense. Over 2,000 employees lost their jobs overnight. Families abroad had their holidays ruined. And for the UK government, organizing the emergency airlift became a logistical nightmare. But beyond the numbers, something deeper was lost: trust. For decades, Monarch had represented reliability, the kind of airline your parents and grandparents flew with. Its collapse marked the end of an era when flying still felt personal. So, what can we learn from Monarch's fall? First, scale matters. In industries with razor-thin margins, being mid-size is the most dangerous place to be. Second, brand loyalty is fragile, especially when consumers care more about price than promises. And third, evolution is survival. In business, standing still is the same as falling behind. Monarch began with a dream: to make flying accessible for everyone. For 50 years, it delivered on that promise. But in the skies of modern aviation, goodwill and nostalgia aren't enough to keep you airborne. In business, as in flight, you can't hover forever. You either climb or you fall. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy uncovering the rise and fall of once great airlines, hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories like this one, where ambition takes flight and sometimes crashes back to earth.